Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump is back at the White House. Good evening on this 20th day of January 2025, a day that all eyes were at the Capitol Hill Rotunda for the very special inauguration ceremony, one of a kind, an indoor inauguration of Donald Trump, who has taken over as the 47th President of the United States, and his deputy, J.D. Vance, who has taken oath of office as the 50th Vice President. Welcome to this continued broadcast and coverage of this election, or rather this inauguration of Donald Trump as he returns to the White House. My name is George Maringa. On sign language interpretation shortly will be Catherine Simaloy. And to further debunk what especially now this new administration of Donald Trump means for Africa and specifically Kenya, I will be joined by four gentlemen, starting with Professor Peter Kagwanja, an international relations expert, Dr. Hassan Kanenje, he is director, Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies. Also joining us will be Dr. Japheth Kaluyu, a political analyst, and joining us all the way from North Carolina is Benson Cheserek, a business and political analyst. Start engaging us on the socials. You can find us at TV47 News, KE at George Maringa _ use the hashtag Daily Report. But before then, here are the highlights. Tonight, President Ruto now says DP Kindiki is not tribal.
Huyu mtu hana ukabila. Huyu mtu si wa shares. Huyu mtu hana mitego. Huyu ni mtu mungwana.
The shareholding and traps of Gachagua. Also tonight, family of murdered activist Raymond Otieno now seeks justice after his murder on Saturday in Nakuru.
I feel so bad na ninataka justice yake ipatikane. Pendo hata ikipatikana. Nitana feel vibaya because he'll never come back again.
His body has been moved to Kericho after protesters picked it from the morgue. Plus, clinical officers start countrywide strike after row over SHA empanelment as governors urge clinical officers to call off their new strike. And Trump takes over.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Donald Trump returns to the White House as the 47th President of the United States after winning last year's election. The golden age of America starts now were the first words of Donald Trump in his speech, who has taken over as the 47th President of America. In his inaugural speech on Monday, President Donald Trump made a series of bold and controversial declarations touching on a wide range of issues from gender policy to international relations. Trump declared that government policy would recognize only two genders, male and female, a statement that has not been made in previous inaugural addresses. He also vowed to end efforts to socially engineer race and gender in public and private life, pledging instead to create a society that is colorblind and merit-based.
I will also end the government policy of trying to socially engineer race and gender into every aspect of public and private life. We will forge a society that is colorblind and merit-based. As of today, it will henceforth be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
After his swearing in as the 47th President of America on Monday, President Donald Trump has pledged to put America first. Trump said that the golden age of America begins right now. He declared that among his priorities will be a national emergency at the border. Trump is promising a flurry of actions on day one on immigration, energy production, crime, and other issues.
And by invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, I will direct our government to use the full and immense power of federal and state law enforcement to eliminate the presence of all foreign gangs and criminal networks, bringing devastating crime to U.S. soil, including our cities and inner cities. As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. Next.
Let's take a break from the inauguration, and just to remind you, we will be having my panelists later on in the program, Professor Peter Kagwanja, Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Dr. Japheth Kaluyu, and Benson Choserek. Do stand by for that analysis a little bit later on. But back into the country, where the body of activist Richard Raymond Otieno is yet to be returned at the Molo Sub-County Hospital morgue after protesters took it yesterday. His family is seeking justice following his murder on Saturday. And as Chichi Josephine now reports, sources indicate that his body moved to Kericho.
At the home of Richard Otieno in Elbagon, Molo Sub-County, Nakuru County, sorrow and grief is evident here. Neighbors grieving with the family, their faces full of confusion on the circumstances that led to Otieno's death on Saturday, as well as his body's whereabouts.
He is my brother. I need to see the body. Nataka nikuzishwe mkono niambie this is my body, the body of your brother.
His body is yet to be returned at the Molo Sub-County Hospital after it was picked by protesters from the morgue on Sunday during demonstrations. His wife, Margaret Muhake, who has not yet come to terms with his husband's demise, narrates the fateful night Otieno was murdered.
Ilikuwa on Saturday at around 11:36 p.m. Ndo alinipigia simu akaniambia mama ndo nataka kukuja nifungulie gate. Kufika bedroom nikasikia somebody screaming. So nikaambia my sister-in-law juu tunaishi na yeye, nimesikia mtu anapiga nduru, so let's go and check. Inaweza kuwa maybe ni Richard because alikuwa amenipigia na niambia anakuja on the way. So immediately we came, tukafika hapo kwa gate tukiwa na torch tukamulika. So from a point tukaona kuna mtu amelala, tukapata ndo ni Richard. He was lying on the floor na alikuwa na deep cuts kwa kichwa.
The 28-year-old woman and the mother of two says that 2 days prior to his death, Otieno had reported to her that his life was in danger as three people had followed him on his way home.
On Thursday, wenye alikuja nyumbani, waliniambia kuna watu wenye aliwaona watatu wakiwa nyuma yake na walikuwa wanakaa very suspicious. So akaniambia from now on kama niko baya.
His sister Rosalina Otieno noted that they were not aware of her brother's whereabouts. According to the family, this was not the first time Otieno had been attacked by unknown people.
Kuna venye mnaweza ni convince as a sister wenye walimkata ni different na wenye wamemkata saizi. So mimi KK abebe msalaba ya Richi.
My late client has been receiving threats and some of them were even screenshots and the screenshots are out in the public with specific names of individuals who had threatened him.
She revealed that her brother was an upcoming politician and an activist who criticized the government and his dreams had been cut short.
Na Richi, I know Richi, my brother, hakuwa napiga siasa ya ukabila. Alikuwa napiga siasa ya haki na vijana.
As the family seeks justice for their kin, they are still not aware of where their kin's body is, after it was allegedly taken away from protesters by officers. Protests locked Molo on Sunday to demand justice when protesters walked away with the body. Police say that investigations have already commenced. Molo Member of Parliament Kuria Kimani, while condoling with the family, called for investigations in the murder.
Investigations should be done even to who stands to benefit when those things happen.
For now, the family is hoping that justice will be served.
I feel so bad. Na ninataka justice yake ipatikane. Pendo hata ikipatikana. Nitana feel vibaya because he never come back again.
Chichi, Josephine, TV47.
Thank you, Chichi. President William Ruto has once again pointed fingers at his former deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, after introducing his current deputy, Professor Kithure Kindiki, as quote-unquote a hard worker with no ethnicity records and traps at the State House against the opposition, as his predecessor had previously hinted. The head of state said former Interior Cabinet Secretary was working day and night to ensure his administration was a success. And as Mike Kagongo now reports, this comes just a day after Gachagua said that it is President William Ruto who had directed him to say so.
In what was seen as an attempt to strengthen his relationship with his deputy, the head of state on his 6 days development tour of the Western region praised Kindiki, describing him as a person who is not tribal and does not set traps like his predecessor.
Niko hapa na Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya anaitwa Professor Kithure Kindiki. Sindio? Alikuwa hapa last month. Very good. Nasikia alikuwa area hapa. Huyu mtu hana ukabila. Huyu mtu si wa shares. Huyu mtu hana mitego. Huyu ni mtu mungwana.
When Kenya Kwanza took over power, Gachagua said he had set traps in all corners of the State House to prevent the then Azimio la Umoja leader Raila Odinga from seeking a coalition government.
Unajua kuna watu wa porojo mingi ati wanajaribu kushindana na sisi. Sasa wewe, mtu ya fitina, mtu ya ukabila, mtu ya share sijui mitego, utashindana na nani kwa hii Kenya?
Ruto's remarks in Kakamega seen as an effort to clear the air after recent concerns that the two had clashed and differed in opinion within the government. Allegations Deputy President Kithure Kindiki recently dismissed. A section of Mount Kenya region leaders are on record saying Kindiki has failed to unite the area despite the unprecedented impeachment of his predecessor, occasioned by his differences with President William Ruto.
Mimi nawaambia hawa, kwanza wacha niwapatie mawaidha ya bure. Kwanza watafute sera, kwa sababu uweze kuuza chuki, uweze kuuza ukabila, uweze kuuza migawanyiko, uweze kuuza mitego, uweze kuuza shares ati upigiwe kura. Hiyo ni ukumbavu na hiyo ni ujinga.
This comes just a day after Gachagua said his shareholding remarks were from the president who had sent him.
Hii maneno ya shareholding alisema alinifukuza naye. Yeye mwenyewe ndiye alikuwa ameniambia. Wewe kwenda kila pahali, mwambie watu wetu serikali ni ya shares. Rais ndiye aliniambia. Siku nyingine ameenda amesema huyu anasema shares is primitive and progressive.
President William Ruto started his development tour in the Western region Monday by launching bonus payments to sugarcane farmers at the Mumias Sugar Company. Being the first time for sugarcane farmers to receive the annual payment, President William Ruto had previously highlighted that the bonus was part of Kenyan government's first plan to revive the sugar industry.
Niliwaambia hatutaruhusu kampuni hizi zichukuliwe na watu binafsi kwa privatization. Niliwaambia we will have a strategic model.
Serikali hii ya Kenya Kwanza ambayo unaiongoza inaendelea kuwekeza rasilimali katika ile mitandao ya dhamani ambao wananchi wengi wa Kenya wanapata riziki kutoka pale.
Ili wewe mwenyewe una haja ya kutengeneza ajira kwa nchi hii. Mipango uko nayo katika viwanda vya sukari itaongeza wafanyikazi wengi sana. Vile ulivyotusaidia katika Wizara ya Elimu kuajiri walimu wengi na unazidi kuwapatia kazi.
However, analysts are keeping an eye on whether President William Ruto will introduce Kindiki in the same manner as he did in the Western region when he visits the Mount Kenya region in the future. Mike Kagwango, TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, Mike. Hundreds of patients were left stranded in different health facilities across the country as the nationwide strike for clinical officers began today. The clinical officers are decrying discrimination in the rollout of the Social Health Authority, SHA. However, governors have come forth urging these officers to cancel the strike as they have made strides in sorting their demands. Sheila Chalangat reports.
Patients in different parts of the country woke up to yet another strike in the health sector, that of clinical officers that began at midnight on Monday. Operations in many facilities were paralyzed by this strike. At the Makadara Hospital in Mombasa, patients were forced to turn back and go home.
Nimekuja tangu saa 12, mamangu aliambiwa aje apigwe picha ya echo. Na mpaka sasa hatujapata huduma na mama hana nguvu hata za kuketi. Yeye ni aketi dakika 2 alafu alale.
Kuko had raised concerns of alleged discrimination of clinical officers in the rollout of the Social Health Authority and refusal to empanel facilities owned by clinical officers.
There is no clinical officer up to today, as we are talking, from Tuesday, who is able to pre-authorize. There is also no facility registered by the Clinic Officers Council that has been empaneled. And so then our conclusion as a union is that the cartels are still at play,
that we have goodwill to resolve this issue. But their government has been absent and not willing to resolve this issue.
These clinical officers have also decried a breach in their return to work formula signed last year that ended their 99-day strike. This CBA comprised of promotions and a comprehensive medical cover for the clinical officers.
Counties like Kirinyaga has never promoted our people. County like Embu still continue giving people promise or not without any promotion. We are completing 2 cycles without a CBA. How insensitive can a government be that you put in place policies and laws that you cannot implement?
However, the Council of Governors has urged clinical officers to call off their strike, noting that some of the key issues that have driven them to down their tools have been sorted.
We have set a technical committee between the COG and the clinical officers, the council. And we gave them 21 days to actually go over, the issues and to have a draft CBA that then will be cascaded to the counties.
This nationwide strike is expected to affect level 5 and 6 facilities and county health centers. Sheila Chelangat for TV47.
Thank you, Sheila. Governors now say they might be forced to address the county's bursaries stalemate with the Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango. Governors have called on the Controller of Budget to reconsider her directive to counties ordering for them to cede the education function to the national government if they wish to continue providing bursary support. The Council of Governors, COG, now says that this decision has left many students stranded. They have resolved to engage the COB in their bid to tackle this matter.
We will engage with the Controller of Budget because of the emergency of the matters at hand, so that they may be able to permit counties to make their requisitions and withdrawal of the funds, and permit counties to pay school fees for these children who are really in need of these children to continue their education. As we speak about this, we are also aware that national government has not even, the Ministry of Education has given capitation to many schools And the children who are relying on bursaries either from the municipal county governments face, the dilemma of them being sent home for school fees.
We would want that the controller of budget first wears a human face. Remembers that there are almost close to 50,000 pupils. Students who are out there, their future is bleak, but we have engaged them, and they only went to the school on the strength of that budget.
Now, a middle-aged man was on Monday morning stabbed and killed by suspected thieves while taking his 3-year-old son to school in Mathare's Area 4. And as Samira Mohammed now reports, the residents have raised concerns over a knife-wielding gang that is giving them sleepless nights.
Tension flared on Monday morning in Mathare's Area 4 slum following the death of a middle-aged man who was stabbed to death in a robbery incident.
Tumebaki na nani? Kwani hii serikali inaangalia nini? Kila wakati hapa inasema anasaidia, Ruto anasaidia nini? Tunaumia kupoteza watu wetu. Tunaumia, ameacha mtoto mdogo, hatalelewa ache.
The issue we are talking about is insecurity. This thing is rampant here. It is not the first time, the second. In fact, now we are recording the fourth. Kwa hii barabara.
According to local residents, the deceased was taking his 3-year-old son to school before he was attacked and fatally stabbed on the right side of his abdomen, leading to his death.
5 asubuhi, saa 11:58, nilisikia kelele. Tokeni tusaidie huyu jamaa anakufa. Kufungua mlango nikapata jamaa amelala chini. Na mtoto analia kanda anasema babangu amedungwa kisu. Saidieni babangu amedungwa kisu.
Locals have raised concern over a knife-wielding gang that is giving them sleepless nights, leading to increased insecurity and murder in the area. They further blame security officers for negligence, which they claim has led to increased crime rate in Mathare.
Polisi akikuwa senior enabler wa wale watu ambao wanatuua hapa. Unapata wakitua leo, wakipelekwa pale wanakuwa released. So wakikuwa released, polisi wanasema there was no enough evidence. Evidence gani? Na evidence ni mtu wetu ako chini.
These as the family of the deceased has called on the government and relevant authorities to expedite on the investigations and ensure justice is delivered for their slain kin.
Serikali angalie, ikuwe na huruma na watu wengine. Anaua kama anabeba mtoto kwa mgongo. Hii ni uchungu. Tumeumia mioyo yetu. Hii serikali iamuke ache kurara. Ruto amerara sana. Ameacha watu wakiumia tafadhali.
Ngiomba sana haki itendeke kwa sababu hii kijiji ikiharibika namna hii na hakuna usaidizi wowote ni bure. Juu leo huyu ndugu yangu ameuawa, mwingine ni nani? Lazima serikali iangalie hii kitu. Isiwe kaa inalegea kwa sababu sisi wote ni wa Kenya.
Samira Mohammed for TV47, Nairobi.
Thank you, Samira Mohammed, for that report, which leads us to our first short commercial break right here on TV47. You're watching The Daily Report. Professor Kagwanja is here in studio already. The other guests will be joining us virtually. Please do stay with us for that extended conversation on Donald Trump's second administration and its ramifications on Africa, specifically in Kenya. Do stay with us.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report with me, George Maringa. On sign language interpretation is Catherine Simaloy. My guests are already here. We'll be getting to that conversation in a short while. But before then, in the United States, Donald Trump has been sworn in to lead the world's superpower. Trump is returning to the White House for a second four-year term as the 47th President of the United States. During the country's 60th inauguration, President Trump makes history by being the second president to serve one term, leave office, and then return to the White House. Moiga William reports.
And will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
And with those words, the United States has a new president. Donald J. Trump becomes the new commander-in-chief. The White House is to have a new occupant, President Donald Trump returning to the White House on Monday with his eyes focused on what he says is making America great again as the 47th president.
Our sovereignty will be reclaimed. Our safety will be restored. The scales of justice will be rebalanced. The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end.
Even before settling down at the White House, Trump in his inauguration speech has announced a raft of changes his minutes-old administration is set to make. Trump promising he's set to sign a number of executive orders.
Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense.
Trump further outlining the top of his agendas is deporting undocumented immigrants and preventing border invasions.
All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came. We will reinstate my Remain in Mexico policy.
Also, Trump has announced there will be changes in policies, including issues related to transgender individuals in American schools. Already, there are concerns that President Trump may set aside Biden administration policies enacted to address climate change and support abortion rights, among other issues.
And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them. All of this will change starting today, and it will change very quickly.
Trump has made history by being the second president to serve one term, leave office, and then return to the White House. This is after defeating outgoing Vice President Kamala Harris in the presidential election held in November 2024. Mwege William, TV47.
Thank you so much, Moige, for that report. Now, here's a fact sheet about the inauguration that ushered in Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. We'll also be looking at highlights and possible, programs, rather, the Kenya-U.S. relations in the coming future. And the presidential swearing-in is a tradition that has been observed since 1789, and this was the 60th presidential inauguration ceremony. Donald Trump took oath of office as the 47th President of the United States of America, USA, and he returns to the White House after winning the 2024 election, where he defeated his opponent, Democrat and outgoing Vice President Kamala Harris. The oath of office is every new president must swear to faithfully execute the office. The oath is a constitutional mandate taken by the incoming president to ensure fidelity to the nation's core values. That is the oath that President Donald J. Trump took earlier on today. Now, the oath is administered by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America, and for the first time, the inauguration is happening indoors. The inauguration took place at the Capitol Rotunda, that is the setting where Trump took oath of office, and there was about 700 people inside the rotunda for that ceremony. There were a number of senators and former presidents, as well as lawmakers from the House of Representatives. Former President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were also in attendance. Barack Obama was also in attendance, but without Michelle Obama, who is deliberately staying away. George W. Bush and Laura Bush were also in attendance. The invited guests included some foreign leaders, such as the Chinese Vice President Han Zheng, the President of Argentina, Javier Milei, as well as Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni were in attendance. And we did see the array of fashion displayed by various guests, all the way from Melania Trump, the new First Lady of the U.S., among other invited guests. Now, Trump has quite an entry. He is expected to sign as many as 100 executive orders on his first day in office, and he's already spoken about the delimitation and the alienation and the specification of gender. There will only be two genders, male and female. The executive orders are signed statements about how the president wants the federal government to be managed. They can be instructions to federal agencies or requests for reports. Many orders can be unobjectionable, but they can also lay out major policies of the U.S. New presidents can and often do issue orders to cancel the orders of their predecessors. Now, the orders do not require congressional approval and can't be directly overturned by lawmakers. During his first term, Trump signed 220 executive orders. Biden signed 160 executive orders as of December 20th. on his intro further is that on the global stage, Trump is focused on renegotiating trade deals, ramping up military spending, and re-evaluating America's role in international climate agreements. We'll also be looking at what that means, especially for the U.S. He has also said he will revisit the ban on TikTok. We did say there was that ban, and he said he will revisit, notably because he gained and they gained billions of views during the campaign. Now let's take this back home, the Kenya-US relations, and what this means especially for the two countries. The United States and Kenya remain strategic partners over time, especially having marked 60 years of diplomatic relations last year in 2024, and that was also highlighted by the state visit to the US by President William Ruto. Kenya is a key ally in East Africa, with the US and Kenya sharing strong ties in trade, security, and development. The US trades with Kenya over $1 billion annually. Kenya is a growing trade partner, with both nations benefiting from economic cooperation. In Obama's legacy was strengthening US-Kenya ties, and during the Obama administration, the US-Kenya relations deepened, particularly through the Global Health Initiative and support for Kenya's fight against terrorism. The future of US-Kenya relations is seen as focusing on matters stability, security, and trade. Under the new administration, the future of this partnership will likely focus on trade deals, military cooperation, and addressing climate challenges. Further, on a security partnership, the two countries will continue to focus on countering terrorism, as Kenya plays a strategic role in US counter-terrorism efforts, particularly in combating the Al-Shabaab militant group in Somalia. Joint military training and counter-terrorism operations will also continue to feature. We've seen the former Secretary of Defense, this former Secretary of Defense making his trips to Africa and especially to Kenya regarding the military agreements. The US military continues to offer support to Kenya, which includes training and intelligence sharing, as well as helping to combat terrorism and ensuring the stability of the Horn of Africa. Finally, on matters Kenya-US relations, Donald Trump in his speech has once again said he will put America first, that is reshaping trade deals that benefit the US, but also will be waiting to see how the African continent, and especially Kenya, shapes itself and also ensures it's a win-win situation for everyone. Trump's America's First policy has led to a re-evaluation of global trade agreements. And under this framework, Kenya could benefit more from direct trade agreements with the US, but it could also face challenges if the US favors bilateral over multilateral deals. That is just a nutshell of the entry that Donald Trump is expected to find, even as he continues to sign several executive orders on his first day in office. Remember, this is his inauguration day. It is exactly 1:48 p.m. in the US, and we want to see, and we'll be waiting to see what is coming out of Washington, especially after that inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump, who takes oath of office, or rather who has taken oath of office as the 47th President of the United States of America. And to remind you, our guests tonight are none other than Professor Peter Kagwanja, an international relations expert and policy advisor, Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Director, Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies, as well as Benson Cheserek. He is a business and political analyst based in North Carolina. And I want us to start off this conversation right from North Carolina, even as we engage the other guests. Benson Cheserek, good afternoon. How is the mood, especially in your state, in North Carolina, following the inauguration of Donald Trump? Especially, what is the Kenyan community saying?
Good afternoon to you, George. Good evening. And here in North Carolina, what the key strategic is the presidency to Donald Trump. A lot of excitement a lot of fear, a lot of liberty. And it's a new day because yesterday there was a lot of, I can tell you, community people who they perceive that they don't have the proper administration. And fear meaning that they are worried whether they will and you get about the first series of executive orders that is about to sign right now. And the great fear is deportation will impact so many people, including immigrants, including children, including Kenyans.
Just so yeah.
United States from the children. So the program that I think fear is one that protected children. And that is the one that I see there is a lot of fear across the board from immigrants across the country right now.
Josurek, we'll be coming to you in a short while. We just need to sort a few issues that we're able to get you clearly. Dr. Kanenje, good evening. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Before you come to Professor Kagwanja here in studio, I want you to perhaps give a nutshell of your reflection and thoughts of the Trump Season 2, as it has been referred in other quarters. What are you seeing, especially with the onset, and how he has started with the executive orders that he is going to sign?
I think in a very typical Trump remained true to it, but he promised things, and his things to be followed through. Fix that up. He, for instance, warned about the changing of the name Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. That perhaps it was just a job, but to be serious. Now, Kenya-U.S. relations.
Dr. Kanenje, we will...
one of that negotiated under the Trump.
Yeah, Dr. let me just cut you short briefly. Apologies for that. We'll also be fixing your audio in a short while. But let me bring in Professor Kagwanja, who is here in studio. Thank you, Prof, for staying with us.
Thank you.
And welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Indeed, as we wait to link up again with our guests who are joining us virtually, what do you make of Trump 2.0, Trump Season 2, Trump's re-entry, resurgence back to the White House? And he has started off on a gusto, sort of continuing with his promises that he made in the campaign period, and you had predicted that he would win.
Yeah.
What do you make of his return to the White House and his new administration?
I think this time round, Americans were ready for him. And you can tell by the number of votes he got in terms of the electoral votes and also the popular vote. So he's a very popular president, judging by the voting. And possibly what I should have done is to start by congratulating America, because they have the ambassador here. Also congratulating the people of the United States for having a new leader today. And also congratulating them for maintaining the tradition of peaceful transition, because that is really the cornerstone of democracy. And I think that is a lesson to many countries in the world that are battling with transitions across the world. At the same time, the community, when you find the community of leadership, which you found in the inauguration, from all former leaders and current leaders from both parties, and it was very, very inspiring in terms of how a nation is built. Despite the rhetoric, heavy rhetoric by the president, everybody was there. Of course, Michelle Obama wasn't there, which is a subject of very many stories online about why she was not there and so on. But essentially, they have maintained the traditional culture of forgetting their own personal differences and coming to celebrate America as one country. So that's really a good lesson for the world. But the Trump Season 1 and Trump Season 2 are the same from an ideological standpoint, because Trump is, a serious populist, and he remained true to the vein of populism. And I think America at this time needed a populist because it's a superpower that has been on decline and needed that kind of rhetoric that America is reborn, America is rising, America's new golden age has started, and that essentially punctuated his speech. It was about raising the spirits of America and promising perhaps more than he'll be able to deliver in 5 years. So whether he can deliver all what he promised in 5 years is doubtful, but at least one thing he did is to soar up the spirits of the Americans.
Let's look at what exactly, I mean, in events such as this, there have, been Kenyans, and there was that cartoon I'm sure you saw earlier on of, I'm forgetting the daily that had that, but, it was the White House, and Africa seemed to just be, jostling to get an invitation to attend such. Perhaps could you just speak to the quote-unquote expectations or lack of it of the invitation from other foreign leaders to attend? It's not a history we've seen with the American dispensation, have we?
No. Obviously, there were 3 leaders who were invited. I think the Chinese sent their vice president.
Yes.
I think the Italians had their prime minister, and I think one more.
Yes.
This time round, it was curious that the British
Argentina.
were not. It was Argentina.
Yeah, and then Liz Truss went in her own private capacity.
In her own capacity. So what one is saying is that Trump is really a wait-and-see kind of a leader for the Europeans. There isn't a lot of enthusiasm in Europe, the kind that you would have expected if Kamala Harris was the one who went to White House. Remember, Trump is not big in transatlantic, alliance. Because he thinks it's a burden, an unnecessary burden for America. For the other leaders think that it is really the pillar of the American greatness. Trump does not believe very strongly in this climate change debate. In the first term, we identified him as a climate denialist. So I saw here in your news talking about the areas of partnership between America and others, the climate change matters. No, Trump has nothing to do with that. Actually, he made the clarion call, drill, baby, drill. In other words, he's going for petroleum, oil, and so on. To make America great again. So he's resorting to old energy. And of course, the executive orders are going to deal with some of the green energy proposals, including electric vehicles that his predecessor had put in place, Joe Biden. So in short, there are many policies that Trump came up with. But the most practical thing was to basically lift the spirits of America. I think that's what he was up to. We are going to plant a flag in mass. All these are populist gestures that soar up the Americans, and I think it's going to work.
Okay.
Because mostly human beings work in terms of motivation. And his is to motivate the Americans. He confronted what he thinks the weaknesses of the American society. And some of the things he was saying is what scholars like Francis Fukuyama and others have been talking about, the decay of the American bureaucracy. So when he talked about cleaning the American society, he's speaking in a language that the great minds of America have been saying since 2013. They have written volumes about the decay and corruption and all the things about America. Obviously, other leaders are not as brave to admit that America is collapsing under its own weight, the weight of decay and corruption of its bureaucracies. But just confronting that is great enough.
Great enough.
Obviously, he's not leaving his idea of walls. But this time he has even made it greater that he has declared a state of emergency in the border between America and Mexico.
Okay.
And has also given Americans the reason to be populist and to be more into kind of war mood. renaming the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America and threatening to take over the Panama Canal. I am sure he's going to execute those will be set for America to achieve without any war.
Okay.
But he has also declared himself, and I think this is significant, that he wants to go into record as a man of peace. I think that's music to the ears of many of us who have witnessed the devastation in Syria, the devastation in Ukraine, the return of the guns in Africa. We have witnessed the resurgence of violence and in the last 5 years, from Ethiopia to Sudan, the entire Sahel. Now, so Africa is not doing extremely well in terms of that, and terrorist movements like Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram and a whole range of other violent movements in the Sahara, from the Arab Maghreb, Al-Qaeda in Arab Maghreb, have all resurged. So really, as his promise of peace in the world is something we want to take him on in terms of whether he's going to deliver or not.
Yeah.
But it's a very positive declaration.
Well, indeed, and that is just the precursor to the greater conversation we'll be having a little bit later on also, not only with Professor Kagwanja, but also with Dr. Kanenje and Benson Chesurek joining us from the US. We are taking a short break. When we come back, more on Trump Season 2 continues right here on TV47. Please do stay with us.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers. We dive deep into the stories of triumph.
Sometimes when parenting a child with a special need or whatever disability, family life becomes a bit complicated and you may end up raising the child on your own.
Here, we inspire.
I have a farm which one we showcase with other dyslexic youths and autism, how to farm.
Motivate.
It's never easy, but what we do, the best thing is to work with another parent who has an elder child than yours.
And break through the barriers one story at a time. Push your boundaries beyond the limit. Saturdays at 8 p.m.
Jiunge nasi tunapoangazia safari za viongozi bora. Kutoka kwa ushindi mkubwa hadi masomo magumu.
Wakati wetu kwamba wasichana si wa kusoma, ni wa kuolewa, ng'ombe ipatikane, wazazi wakuwe watajiri.
Tunashughulikia yote.
I wish I were a better investor.
My parents taught me how to look for things for myself.
Tazama Mfahamu Kiongozi, ambapo kila kipindi kimejaa maarifa, mikakati na hadithi za kukuza azma yako.
For me to succeed, I have to fight.
Kila Alhamisi saa 1:30.
Welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report. Let's make sense of the signs before we continue the conversation on Trump 2.0, where CS Lee Kenyan has officially assumed office as Cabinet Secretary for Trade, Investment and Industry, succeeding Salim Mvurya in a handover ceremony earlier today. Mvurya expressed confidence in Kenyan's ability to build on his work, highlighting his experience as Nakuru Governor, MP and Assistant Minister. Kenyan expressed optimism for the tasks ahead. With his experience, he is set to push forward initiatives aimed at expanding Kenya's economic footprint.
Njui is somebody we have worked very well as a governor. You remember he's the immediate former governor of Nakuru County. And I have no doubt, because Honorable Lee is bringing a very robust profile, having been a governor, a member of parliament, an assistant minister, and he also led very good reforms in NTSA, and therefore I'm very, very confident that as I hand over to my colleague, he is also going to continue with the processes, that are ongoing in the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry.
I want to say that in the last few days I have received information regarding closure of certain companies, maybe without naming them, but this is due to various reasons. And while it is not inevitable that some industries will be overtaken by time and technology, we shall institute mechanisms to address challenges that are salvageable. And I think all you're trying to say is that just as businesses are started, there are others that will be overtaken by technology and time. But I think what we really want to emphasize is that across the industry is to have an open door policy, so that whenever there are issues, we can be able to address them, and more importantly, before some of these things happen.
The Kenya Tree Growers Association has today sounded the alarm over a series of alarming land invasions and criminal activities targeting large-scale tea producer estates. Addressing the media, the Kenya Tea Growers Association chairman Silas Njibwakale singled out the ongoing illegal land invasion of Sitoi Estate owned by Eastern Produce Kenya Limited in Nandi County and the recent unlawful harvesting of trees at Samret Estate in Kericho County. The association has claimed that it is concerned over the lack of response from security agencies and the national government, which has continued to encourage the invasions, including blatant flouting of court orders.
KTGA has observed with increasing concern the invasion and illegal tea harvesting activities at Eastern Produce Kenya's, Limited, in Nandi County, and an attempted raid by armed individuals at Brown's East Africa's Samret Estate, formerly, Ekatera, Lipton's, those are the popular names that are known. In Nandi, well-organized criminal gangs have in recent months established themselves at EPK's Sitoi Estate. These gangs have occupied crucial estate zones, including the airstrip of Sitoi, crippling operations and placing lives and property at substantial risk.
Sports News brought to you by Maybets.
Let's get sporty. Team Kenya was once again super in day 2 of the Confederation of African Tennis Eastern African Team Championships played today at the Nairobi Club. Now, the Team Kenya is led by teenage sensation Ayush Bandari, who is fresh off bagging the Under-16 boys title alongside his teammate Nancy Kawira, who also took home the Under-16 trophy in the ladies category. This comes after Kenyan players won 5 out of the 6 singles titles that were in contention in the Junior Individual Championships that concluded on Saturday. The winners will represent the East Africa region in the African Junior Championships.
Last week was an amazing week for me. I played really well. I wasn't feeling like I was a bit sick, but I managed to pull through the whole week. I tried my best every single match. Some matches were tougher than others, but I treated all matches the same. Yeah, I feel like I played really well. I played really good opponents, but I had the upper hand. Especially because it's at home. I knew I had everybody supporting me. I knew I had people behind my back. And being ranked number 1 for under-16 in East Africa is a really good achievement to me.
It went well, and so far I'm so happy about how the tournament is progressing so far. And I'm really happy for all the organizers and the tournament directors for sponsoring this tournament. And I thank them for sponsoring this tournament, and I thank all the children who came to play this tournament. Yeah.
The winners of this event get a chance to represent East Africa in the African Junior Championships, which are held in, there's one in Egypt starting the week after next, and then there's going to be under 14 event that's also African Junior Championships that will be held right here in Nairobi. So basically it's the winners from this that get to take part in that.
Now, James Karaoke emerged victorious after clocking 28 minutes and 25 seconds in the 10 kilometers men's race at the Athletics Kenya Cross Country Championships Embu County edition held at Betty Academy in Mbeere South. Karaoke narrowly edged out Jimna Karaoke and Alexander Njai, who finished second and third respectively. In the women's senior 8 kilometers race, Mary Munanu claimed the top spot, finishing inside 23 minutes and 47 seconds, while Nancy Githaiga and Philomena Chepchirchir secured a second and third places. The under-20 women's 6 kilometers race saw Shimonita Muthoni take first place with a time of 21 minutes 12 seconds, closely followed by Lea Murugi and Elizabeth Ndwega, who finished second and third. The under-20 men's 8 kilometers race was equally competitive, with John Nthenge leading the pack as Kristen Mbogo and Maurice Njoe took second and third respectively. A team of 24 athletes will represent Embu County at the Upper Eastern Cross Country Championships scheduled for February 1st in Tharaka Nithi County.
Been great with the encouragement of my coach, Mr. Jello. He has been encouraging us to do more and more. Also, kwa mazoezi ya SIGNET tumekuwa tukipika, so the weather was also favorable. Yeah, daily thanks God for the best amenifanyia na nikakuwa mshindi wa leo.
Naweza sema mbio ilikuwa, it was not very bad. Joto tu ndio mingi. But despite tukiwa wachache, ilibidi tungangane because kwenye tunaenda mbele siku zuri vile.
Furaha yangu haswa ni kuona leo wakimbiaji wetu wamekuwa over 200 ambayo tumefuja rekodi ambayo ile tulikuwa tumeweka ya 100 last year. Hii sasa hii imefuja kila kitu kwa sababu wakimbiaji wetu wachanga walikuwa wengi sana.
Following the rise in cases of gender-based violence and murders targeting athletes, the government has initiated a comprehensive strategy to address these incidents, urging athletes to report any cases of gender-based violence directly directed at them. This comes just after the head of state, President William Ruto, gazetted a technical working group to focus on matters related to gender-based violence and femicide. The government has vowed to educate the athletes on the matter and insists they will not relent in the fight against violence targeting athletes in the country.
The question then is, how do we deal with those issues? It starts by coaching and training the young people. By the time the femicide committee is done with its job and the president put the committee in place the other day, it is now gazetted. We are waiting for them to be sworn in so that they can roll out and put a 360-degree approach in all the work that we are doing. So many people are doing many things. But now we are saying all these advisories, all this work that is going has to be consolidated so that we can have a near working solution for this country.
Sports News brought to you by Maybet.
Welcome back. You're watching The Daily Report with me, George Maringa, and Catherine Simaloy on sign language interpretation tonight. We were having a conversation earlier. We had the prelude with Professor Kagwanja, who is still here in studio. Thank you so much for staying with us, Prof. And we are also delighted this evening to have Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Director, Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies, as well as Benson Cheserek, Business and Political Analyst based in North Carolina in the USA, where they have a new president. Benson, let me come back to you. Earlier on, you were speaking about the mood and the reception of this inauguration and Trump season 2. How is this being received, especially in your state?
Thank you, George. North Carolina is one of the big agriculture states here in the South. And as you go to Georgia, there are some states in terms of course on. So the immigration enforcement, the ones that have just been signed, executive orders, goes in a lot of anxiety in the immigrant community. And that is where it is coming from. The program that was started by Obama called DACA to protect children of immigrants who came here when they didn't have the paperwork. There is a fear that that one might be completely wiped out of the books right now by Donald Trump. So those are the two major issues that I think it is affecting immigrants here. That is the perception from the immigrant community or people without proper documentation. On the Americans themselves, George and your panelists here, America, I don't know, I will disagree with your guest briefly say that America is in decline. America is not in decline. America has people in its development. And there is a perception that this country, they have achieved everything possible on this planet. I mean, if you think about every kind of technological innovation, they have been there. They have been there and they have been there. So what people perceive as a decline is maybe their inability to do anything extra above what they have achieved. And they are still there. I mean, if you look at the security of this country, it is the country with the highest amount of finances in terms of military and all the complexes, 800 billion. You talk about their roads, you talk about the water, you talk about infrastructure in terms of anything they have achieved. I don't know what is the test of now them being declined, but that is subject that can last for a very long time. Then talk about two things that are going to be probably impactful to Africa. There is one area that we need to look into, especially with this new Donald Trump administration, and especially the funding of the State Department. The State Department is responsible for many of the projects that are being done in Africa, including the AIDS research in Kenya here. If Donald Trump is going to affect those kind of programs, then it might be a lot of changes and a lot of difficulties in fulfilling some of the important programs that are being run, especially on medical research, those that are being done in consumer. The security strategic interest of the U.S. also is important. I think some of the security cooperation that we might be up or might continue because U.S. interest is always on security. When you look at Lamu and all those other things that are happening in Africa. A very important thing that African leaders should watch, and I mentioned this during our previous time here, is the APOR program. African Group and Opportunity Act was enacted almost 20 years ago, and it has never fully benefited African specific of ours. There are still areas that needed to be worked on by the African leader, and during Donald Trump administration. So if AGOA is going to be cancelled, it might be an impactful thing on the business community, on the trade and business interest, the African community. That's an area that I think we should pay attention to.
Indeed. Dr. Kanenje, when you look at what you were speaking earlier on and you combine with perhaps the expectations, and we did see there was quite a support for Donald Trump outside America, even in the African continent, even in Kenya, guys were really vouching for him. Do you think that there is any supposed impact of his presidency, and to what extent?
George, it is true there was a lot of enthusiasm about Donald Trump, which the African continent, especially, not so much because of the expectation that he was going to do something great, but I think it might be some disappointment that Africans and a lot of the global South actually have in Joe Biden's administration. Not just because the wars were going on in the Middle East, but the almost complete lack of focus and attention paid to African crises, humanitarian situations, and other aspects. Now, it is important for us to understand that certain aspects are going to suffer, as my colleague has mentioned, and which typically suffers under administration. And that has to do, for instance, public planning or active health. Generally, Republicans tend to invest way less in Africa when it comes to that. The climate agenda, of course, is something that is not top right for Donald Trump. And certain aspects of health may also, suffer as a result. But I think from a strategic perspective, peace and security matters. I think the state is going to remain engaged with Kenya. During the Senate confirmation hearings for Marco Rubio, I think he pointed out that Kenya has been in Haiti and indicated a desire to ask other member states, including Western countries, to perhaps chip in to contribute forces to that effect. So we expect there's a likelihood for an expanded engagement in that, just because it's going to help the United States be able to undertake that job. But I think also because the Biden administration, despite the commitments they had made, they struggled even to get Congress to support the Kenyan mission. And there's a likelihood that has affected the full deployment of the Kenyan contingent in Haiti. So we expect from that strategic perspective, the relationship is going to remain strong. On trade and investment, Donald Trump had initiated, together with Nairobi, a process and discussions of deepening trade engagements. Of course, that drew some criticism and reservations in part because of Africa concern. What impact that was going to have? Considering the exceptional nature of Trump, there is a likelihood that Kenya being.
Okay, Dr. Let me take it from you for a minute. I'll be coming back to you. Prof, when you listen to, and you are among the Kenyans that I'm saying are supporting Donald Trump, what ramifications does his leadership portend, the Trump administration portend for the African continent, and then when we look at the Kenyan context?
I think the key thing to underline is that Donald Trump is a businessman. And as a businessman, he has shown that his main focus in this era is productivity. What he's talking about, the bringing America's golden age. And the strategies he's applying are those of a businessman. Businessmen don't take their companies to war, unlike warriors. That's why he's talking about, if you remember that beautiful phrase he used, that he's going to win over the wars that are ongoing on, meaning ending the wars that are there, and he's going to ensure that there is that he does not declare new wars. One of the main arguments made by the Republicans at one point was that America has declined because it has waged war in every corner of the world, which I tend to agree with. And that has had a cost on America's greatness, because the moment you become the warrior of the world and the rest are developing, then you start to lose. Inversely, if you look at China, from 1980 to date, China has never gone to any war that you can say this is China versus this. Skirmishes here and there, but never major wars. And therefore, China has had the longest period of prosperity, over 40 years. And that is how it has managed to catch up with America and to become a superpower. So China has actually invested in peace in order to develop. And that seems to be the strategy that Donald Trump wants to achieve. And that's good to the Africans, that if we can have peace for at least a straight 5 years without our wars, then many parts of Africa would rise to greatness. The other point that has come from his regime is emphasis on trade. And I think for Africa, he's going to revitalize AGOA. that agreement which was started by Clinton.
Clinton, yes.
And it's one of the longest legal framework that has been there for Africa and America to engage. And I think it was there, but under Joe Biden, it did not come out as prominently as it was during the first Trump. And we look forward to it. But I think Trump is going to emphasize more on bilateral relationship with African countries. And you remember Kenya and and America were negotiating a bilateral arrangement with America. That didn't go down well with some of Kenya's neighbors. But sometimes you have to say, is the interest, national interests prevail over everything else? We are in East African community because it serves our interests. We are in IGAD because it serves our interests. And therefore, the interests of Kenyans are very, very important. In any case, we are under Kenya Kwanza, meaning Kenya first kind of government. So not very different from the populism of Donald Trump based on American interests.
Okay.
I think security is going to be a key issue. And Africa has, as I said earlier, witnessed a kind of a rebound of the age of violence in many ways, largely associated with the terrorism, associated with the conflict as in Sudan and Ethiopia, but more increasingly, even sectarian conflict, as we are seeing the resurgence of Mungiki and other militias in stable countries like Kenya. So if that environment of non-violence, and for Trump, he's not just looking at it globally, he's even focusing on American neighborhoods. The communities, of blacks and others, the cabals and criminals that are undermining, security of the country. And I think that is the spirit that he'll exude globally. And I think that's important. So I did not get the kind of threatening remarks from the first Trump. The second Trump is a little bit softer, a little bit more promising, a little bit more conciliatory, except when it comes to, Joe Biden. I think the rivalry was deep, and he didn't manage to hide it. He talked about the failure of the past government, even to deal with small local crises like the fires in Los Angeles, the tornadoes in North Carolina. In other words, these vagaries, devastated America as Biden watched. In other words, America banned as Biden dithered. And that's simply the message that Trump was sending. So I think Africa can look at this, era peace-free. Remember, and I think one would really underrate this, Trump signed the decree that America from today hence until he's in office has only two genders, male and female. I am sure wherever President Yoweri Museveni was, that was really a happy moment, because he's the single African president who has suffered, including cut in foreign aid, support, America, Uganda bilateral relationship, and he was used as the dummy, basically to scare. Yeah. It was a public spectacle that Joe Biden's America was using basically to tell the rest of Africa that you have to tolerate and toe the line of this American, culture where you have more than two genders. Obviously, the Bible provides for two gender, and I'm a Christian, so forgive me. But this is something that is going to happen. What is it? That in Donald Trump's America, we are not going to be defined by the messianic spread of American culture to the rest of the world, but we are going to be based on what is mutual between us: the trade, security of the world, our security. It's going to be about America looking after itself and us in Africa looking ourselves. I guess this is going to be race imperialism, quoted in the language of human rights and whatever rights. We are going to look more into the public than the bedrooms. America has been too much focus on the bedrooms rather than on the public space, which I think for a superpower, that was stooping too low.
Indeed. Let's take another break. When we come back, we continue with our conversation on Trump's taking over as U.S. president, the 47th president of the U.S. Please stay with us.
Are you ready to elevate your business game?
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
Kama wewe ni mfanyabiashara, huwezi kaa bure, unajipanga taratibu vile inavyofaa.
Join us each week as we dive into the stories of the world's most driven entrepreneurs.
When you pay attention to detail, you get luxury items.
The Grind, where business meets brilliance. Tune in every Monday at 7:30 p.m. because your business deserves the best.
Hey there, friends. Welcome to Kids on the Block, where fun and imagination come alive. We dive into magical world filled with exciting adventures and awesome friends.
What position were you in?
I was number 2.
What position were you?
Number 1.
He decided to cross the bridge by his house and look for food on the other side.
We're going to do half cup of chocolate chips, and the other one, we're going to do half cup of the blueberries.
So, grab your imagination hats and get ready to explore with us. Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. for new friends, amazing stories, and tons of laughter.
Join us as we explore the journeys of those who defy the odds and break barriers.
welcome back. You're watching the Daily Report. In studio, we have Professor Peter Kagwanja. Virtually is Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Director, Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies, as well as Benson Cheserek, Business and Political Analyst, joining us from North Carolina. Dr. Then let's look at the international outlook of the U.S. and how then the U.S. is seeking to be seen and to portray itself in the rest of the world. Do you think that there will be any tectonic or very significant or over-significant changes that we'll see not only in Kenya but also across the globe touching on the U.S.?
Yeah, most certainly. I think the presence of a Chinese vice president alone is significant in telling. And nothing like that has happened, I think, in recent years. And considering the kind of relationship that existed between Donald Trump and the People's Republic of China in the past administration, I think this is significant, and I think it is intended to send a message that he wants, being a deal maker, he is ready to make some deals, as I think reflected by his willingness, number one, to save TikTok from potential ban, which, of course, something that was done in a bipartisan way at some point early last year. Second, he was very clear he wants to be a peacemaker. He's been very consistent with regard to his uneasiness with regard to continued funding Ukraine, to end it in the war. Of course, it's unlikely that's going to achieve that, but I think all evidence is going to be limited support, military as well as equipment in Ukraine, considering the amount of money it involved, and also considering it is with the public base. On other aspects like climate, you're likely to see the U.S., I think, with the drop in a significant way. And that is going to affect, including Kenya's own place as a tribute for the climate agenda, kind of occupied with in much of the last 2 years. Because U.S. funding is actually critical to the extent that there's a likelihood there's not going to be support. Of course, is going to avoid that. But then there are going to be serious changes to the relations. It's not a very big fund of spending to protect the U.S. without pulling up their socks and securing their own pattern. And so there's a likelihood there's going to be changes in that, as well as relations, perhaps in a way that perhaps Europeans may not like it very much. But I don't think the rest of the world may care very much.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Benson Cheserek, I wonder, how is the business community, from especially the Kenyan business community, viewing in terms of continuation and once again the mood like in terms of the continuation of President Trump's administration moving forward? Do you think, or do you foresee the expansion of such opportunities for the African continent and especially for Kenyans in the US and vice versa?
Well, I want to remember that Donald Trump campaigned on tariff. My friend Dr. Hassan just mentioned about Indian money. One of the biggest issues is one of the reasons why we have this vice president here is because of the issue of tariffs. Donald Trump promised that he's going to put a lot of tariffs on things that are going to be in this country. So what does that mean? First of all, that means that anything here in the diaspora will benefit, because there is an incentive that will come from that. You face that taxation if you do business. The great perception that will be doing business here. Now, as far as our country, African countries, is concerned, to be honest with you, until probably we see the specifics of some of the executive orders or some of the policies that are going to be proposed, we may not be able to know whether Trump is going to actually do anything to improve either business in Africa or business in other places. But you can tell the major trading partners of the United States are already trying to come close to him. more importantly, to reduce or to try to avoid the tariff, especially the closer countries, Canada and Mexico, some of the biggest trading partners here in the United States. That is where their worry is. What I would foresee happening is a situation where Africans will have to negotiate for better trade investments and other things to come in. But Trump is trying to invest in United States. He wants things to be produced in United States. He has been anti-China in so many things. That is an opportunity for Africans here to sit down, if they can be able to sway Trump to do some of these things in Africa, if it is possible, so that they can even slow down the issue of migration. Because if there can be incentives for Americans to start businesses there, or for investors to flock there so that they can avoid China, because you can see this is a war between West and East, then Africa could become a resultant beneficiary of some of these policies. But it will depend specifically on what the African leaders will do.
Dr. Kanenje, when we look at the peace aspects that even Professor Kagwanja mentioned earlier on, Donald Trump said he would end the Russia-Ukraine war in 48 hours. How practical are some of his suggestions and policies, perhaps? Dr. Kanenje, you still there? We will get to Dr. Kanenje in a short while. But Prof, when we talk about the peace, and you mentioned it and you alluded to it earlier on, and you talk about the world having a deficiency of peace that they now see in Trump. How practical is it to end the war in 48 hours, the Russia war?
I think what he did is he demonstrated that one day before he was sworn in, he has made a remarkable success in terms of the Israeli-Palestinian war, that some hostages have returned home in America and elsewhere. So already saying that he had started the behind the curtains negotiations to end the war in Palestine. And I think that is something you can give it to him, that he is going to do something. I don't know how fast with Palestine, but with Ukraine, that will can even be in less than 48 hours. Why? Because America has been one of the key supporters of this war. The moment you drain the swamps of Zelensky's support, now how can he wage war? So, and it's a question of agreeing with the Russians on what they themselves are going to do as soon as this other side stops the war. Remember, this is not your really kind of classic war between Russia and Ukraine. This is a proxy war between NATO and Russia. And therefore, as soon as America withdraws its support to NATO, it's finished. Remember also what Joe Biden's strategy was to ensure that Europe does not depend on on oil and gas from Russia, but depend on oil and gas from across the Atlantic. And what Trump is trying to say is that without saying it, and if you judge it from his first term, he's not a very strong believer of NATO or the transatlantic kind of a treaty. Yeah. So that sounds like he's likely to settle the battle in Ukraine. What does that mean for us in Kenya and the rest of Africa? It means that we are going to begin the recovery from the devastation that came with rising prices. Our consume oil, our fertilizers, and everything is going to go down because there is no war. You can get it from Ukraine or you can get it from Russia as war ends. Let's also, I think somebody mentioned about the presence of the Vice President of China in this inauguration. I think that's really a big sign that we are going to end or tone down major powers conflict. Remember, Joe Biden started on the opposite by inaugurating what is called the U.S. National Security Strategy in October 2022. And this was a declaration of war, short of saying we are in an open war, because he only left an area for China where they can cooperate on a number of issues, like climate change and so on. But in the rest of the space, it was superpower competition, if you read that document, still online. I have never read such a hostile document in recent years, since the end of the Cold War. It was very, very hostile. And that meant that the two powers, not at the level of trade, as we had seen the trade wars with Trump before in the second round, but in this case, it's geopolitical. It started affecting us. And Kenya is one of the countries that faced the full brunt of the, that kind of superpower confrontation. And you could feel it during our last election, when we openly came out to attack our main financier, our main trading partner, and so on. And most of us were asking, where is this coming from? It was coming from this document, which had clearly indicated, I think in page 49, that Africa is a major frontier in this ideological warfare. The main thrust of this ideological warfare, not expansion of trade and so on. It was essentially the ideology of human rights. You are with us or against us kind of engagement. I think that's going to be toned down. Documents like this ones are going to be irrelevant. And I think we're going to forge a new understanding between powers by toning down the ideological tension between China and America. China itself was forced to make its own declaration after this. Therefore, it came with 3 initiatives. The Global Security Initiative, which is basically saying that collectively we are going to deal with our own security to counter what America is coming with. The Global Civilizational Initiative, saying all civilizations are equal. No civilization should pretend that it is more powerful and more important than other civilizations. And finally, they came up with what they are calling Global Development Initiative, basically to counter this kind of strangulation of powers who do not toe the line of the America. Of course, the language was different, but it is how China reacted that way.
Okay.
So yeah, this is we are looking forward to a new world order, and I think that's why personally I was very optimistic about the second Trump, because the Donald Trump for the Democrats was okay, but for those people who are in terms of a value-based human relations, shared values approach to geopolitical relations.
Okay.
I think the previous regime was such a frustration, and even at home, that is why Kamala Harris lost, because she amplified more about gender and all those things rather than what was ailing the Americans: the unemployment, lack of jobs, declining domestic resources. So essentially that is how I see it, and that's why there is an optimism. Of course, Kenyans are divided into 2: those who support Trump, the Gen Zs, and those who support the regime that was defeated, and those are us, okay, the Gen X and the baby boomers, who are only 2% of the total population.
Dr. Kanenja, there was this perception that Kenyans, a section of them, if you followed what was going online, wanted and thought that Trump would quote-unquote tame African countries that were not getting in order. Do you think that is a practical thing, whereas of course there is territorial integrity by every nation, but what are some of the things that perhaps African countries, Kenya, would need to start aligning itself and saying, okay, this is what the US is going for?
First of all, Donald Trump is not an interventionist, so you're not expecting him to start meddling in the internal affairs of many. But you need to expect that when it comes to areas, whether it's on energy or on security or defense, I think that is something that you should expect that African countries, some of them are going to expected to draw the line. There's going to be, I think, an emphasis on, for instance, fighting terrorism, which is something that also Republicans like. It's going to be pushback when it comes to immigration, and I think countries on the continent are going to be required to ensure that they manage immigration in ways that they don't end up in the United States, and the U.S. is likely to commit more resources, as I think evidence in the speech that Donald Trump just made today, using even the military, to prevent people from coming from Mexico as well as other parts of Latin America. And so I think he's going to support efforts to keep immigrants, African immigrants, within Africa. And these efforts are already ongoing by a number of European countries, so it will not be the first thing that Donald Trump, is starting to do. But I think there's likelihood that he's going to double that. There is perhaps going to be a little bit more focus on expansion of exploitation of fossil fuels, and there's a likelihood that countries that are in that path perhaps may get some support from the United States. But I think outside some of those key things, Donald Trump is not exactly an internationalist person, and I think he wants to be remembered, despite the at least an image from the liberal side of things that he loves dictators and stuff like that. He wants to present himself as a peacemaker. He does not want to start new wars, and he would like to be able to end the existing ones. So at least he's able to achieve some of his aims. But to the extent that he's going to interfere in the internal affairs of African countries, I think that is something he's not exactly very keen to do, because it takes resources and it may cost lives. And that goes counter to his beliefs and goes counter to some of the conservative, members or rather supporters, of the United States, of course, who are going to be key, not just this year, but in 2 years' time, you're going to have, a midterm elections. And if he has not been able to meet some of these, promises that he's already made, then of course the Republicans are going to get, in the words of Donald Trump, a shellacking in which they may not recover from, until perhaps 2028. And so I think he's very keen to avoid that.
Indeed, and your closing remarks, and perhaps just a minute, Dr. Hello? Okay, let's get the closing. Yeah.
Oh, myself? Okay.
Yes.
Let me add something quickly as I close.
Yes.
Especially the issue of Ukraine and the US. Most of you understand that US superpower has been projected based on how they put in together a coalition of countries, especially NATO, when Prof at the studio there said. So a defeat in Ukraine actually would almost look like a weakened America, because they have to project that power, their ability to put together a serious coalition that can fight on these issues. So you really never know what could happen. And I think when reality settles in for Donald Trump, that he has to defeat, or Ukraine has to win this war. And you can understand that this war actually started because of what? Ukraine wanted to join the NATO and Russians didn't want, and this is a possibility where US could finally project their true superpower of the world. On my final comments in regard to Africa,
yes,
Donald Trump presidency could be that what we call a blessing in disguise. The fact that US may not interfere with so many things happening in Africa, this could be an opportunity for Africans to chart their way forward. Democrats have always been intrusive in so many things, especially on social issues. This could be a moment for African leaders to develop their own way of doing things, whether it's business, social issues. And I am looking at a situation where if Africans don't prepare themselves, they may be in a root show.
Indeed, thank you so much. Professor Kagwanja, let's come to you and look at the energy conversation. You alluded to it earlier, and perhaps how can then, because we've seen the direction that Kenya is taking, clean energy and all, Donald Trump is drill, baby drill, you said that earlier. Briefly, as you compound even with your closing remarks, do you think there is a potential problem?
No, I don't think there's a potential problem. And one of the unspoken truths about the climate conference in Nairobi, which was hosted by President William Ruto, was the discomfort within a number of countries like Tanzania, Angola, Mozambique, and others that are having oil reserves, because the shift to the clean energy emphasis meant that Africa has basically to stop drilling or using its own oil and then taking it to the marketplace. And this happens at a time when Africa has just begun exploring its own oil. And as such, even in America, the movement for the so-called clean energy meant that America was not exploiting the oil, which Donald Trump is calling the liquid gold in the Americans' feet. So I think we are not really saying that we don't begin to think hard and fast about climate change and its impact in societies, but it is about the transition. So it is more about the energy transition. How to transition to clean energy without disrupting economies and without preventing economies from investing in the resources that they have. Take, for instance, we are known polluters. And that is why today, if you looked at the dailies today, they were reporting about the Kenya government's interest in following from what Tulo has been doing in Turkana, and doing more exploration in Wajir, in Kirifi, and other parts of the country. That's what was in the papers today. What is the context of that? Because America has changed. We also have got the latitude. This emphasis on renewable energy is very good, but it also comes with heavy technological capacity, which we don't have access to. We have not started hearing about manufacturing of renewable cars in Kenya. Or any other parts, meaning we are going to import these technologies from outside, which is what we are doing. Okay. And if we can do our oil, that would okay. So in my closing remark, I think I want to say the following, that one, what has happened in America, and I agree with Dr. is essentially a blessing in disguise. It is a blessing for Africa that we are going to make independent decisions about our own development and about our future. And second, our relationship with America is going to be interest-based. It is not going to be based on superpower, weak power relationship, which was the case with Joe Biden. There was a lot of camaraderie. You could see it in visiting heads of state. But underneath that was a very, very iron-fisted, neo-colonial force, whereby you are to toe the line of the American, internal interest. Now we can have a good relationship with America based on our own interest and also based on their own interest, particularly in the area of security and the area of development. About human rights and other issues, that is a human issue. It's a global issue. It's not an American issue. Abductions and all that are already in the United Nations law. We can deal with it with them that way. But essentially, development is a big, big issue, particularly in Africa, where poverty has been increasing, not decreasing. Increasing.
Indeed, absolutely. Thank you so much. And what a way to wind up the show tonight. We've been speaking to Professor Peter Kagwanja here in studio. He is an international relations expert and policy advisor. Thank you, Prof. Dr. Hassan Kanenje, Director, Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies, as well as Benson Cheserek, business and political analyst, joining us from North Carolina tonight. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. My name is George Maringa. On sign language interpretation has been Roda Nyamai. Good night from Nairobi. Stay safe and be kind to one another.